Ms. Schuyler, you're going to take notes for us. Thank you.
Notes, yeah.
All right, I call this meeting of the Lake Country Classical Academy to order at 6 p.m. on February 19th, 2025. In accordance with Wisconsin open meeting law, the required public notice of this meeting ran Saturday, February 15th. An issue of the Waukesha Freeman was posted on the LCCA website and at the front entry doors of both school campuses. The LCCA mission is to train the minds and improve the hearts of young people through a content-rich classical education in the liberal arts and sciences with instruction in the principles of moral character and civic virtue. So please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge of
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, Schuyler, please let the roll call show that all board members are present.
Would they say exception of Stacy?
I'll get to that in a second. So you can leave Stacy off. So meeting notes, is there any objection to the minutes from the January 15th meeting or this agenda? Nope. Any objections? Then the agenda is approved. And I have a couple things.
The minutes are approved.
Yeah, and the minutes are approved too. Thank you, Ellen. I want to respond to a couple comments from before we get into the new public comments. And there was actually no formal comments at the last meeting, but there was a couple email comments. So since they were general comments, I thought it'd be best just to address those so everybody can hear the answers who's interested. So the first of those was at the last election, I was named interim president. One of our astute community members noted that in the bylaws there is not a provision for an interim president. So what happened there was Tom was trying to accommodate me by limiting the commitment for me, and we were going to amend the bylaws to allow for the interim president. But after talking with Tom and Margaret, we just didn't think this was a time for an interim president. We need somebody fully committed, rather than somebody standing in until we found a new president. So we'll take off the interim part of the president, and so I'll be fully committed for this year and all in on the role. So I wanted to make that clear. The other question that had come up was on the principal's report. And the question was, can we post the principal's report on the public agenda? And I know that had come up in the past, and Margaret, I know you said it was sort of a work in progress and always changing, so we didn't want to post it until we had it complete, and then would post it afterwards. So I didn't know with the new agenda now, we're sort of a more streamlined agenda. We've gotten those, multiple days in advance, if that would be okay, if we could just post that agenda along with everything else in advance.
What I'm presenting tonight is different from in one of the charts I've updated than what I sent. So I would leave that up to the board if you choose to do that or not.
So I'm wondering if we could just maybe just date what you have, post what we have, with a certain date on it, knowing that that could potentially change, and then we could just repost whatever the modified document is that we're doing.
Hand out, if there's an update, hand it out at the meeting as well. Make copies available.
The opportunity cost of that is we would have erroneous information being made public that could be kept and forwarded intentionally or unintentionally, as opposed to just posting the final.
Yeah.
Subject to change.
Yeah. Okay. Well, we'll figure that out and see if we can do that. And I think the main reason was just if they can see the agenda in advance, and if there's any questions or comments, they could see that in advance. Whereas now we present it after the public comments, and then there could be no comment until the next month's meeting. So I think that was the reason for the question.
But was the ask to post the agenda or the report?
The principal's report.
So the full report?
Yeah. So the agenda's out there with the attachments, and the principal report was not attached. Okay. So we'll figure out what we can do practically, and then we'll get that posted if we can make that, you know, in a way that's accurate and not too, you know, burdensome of putting any inaccurate information out there. So public comments, we have one here. So Erica Urban, you had an item which actually was the principal's report, so I don't know if it was related to this, but go ahead.
Yeah. Hi, I'm Erica Urban. I just wanted to introduce myself to the new board members. I have 4 children, an 8th grader at West, a 4th grader, and a 1st grader at East, and then a 1-year-old at home. I've been attending a majority of the board meetings since the school opened, and I've noticed some changes that have occurred over the last year that seem alarming. I would appreciate the board looking over these changes to see if they're necessary, legal, and to benefit the school. So what I'm going to speak about first of all is the principal's report, and I appreciate Randy bringing that to attention. The principal's report is no longer available for parents or community members to look over before the board meetings. Now that the board has changed the public comment policy to only allow public speaking about issues on the agenda, it makes it nearly impossible to allow parents to speak at these meetings. We're pretty much silenced. For example, I would be speaking about the principal's report, but I am only assuming what I'm speaking about will be addressed tonight at the board meeting. It makes it very challenging to give input and ask questions about topics on the agenda without having any material before the end of the meeting. Secondly, I feel it's extremely important to show our current enrollment numbers and waitlist numbers to praise the successes of the school or to focus on what's not going well at the current time. These numbers were always available in the principal's report in the past when we had full classrooms and people lined outside of our doors on the wait list. Why is this information being hidden from the community now? If there's a large wait list, we need to continue spreading good word about our school to the people waiting to get into the school. Instead of like Facebook, there was a lot of nasty comments and people actually left the wait list because of it. If there's no wait list, or even if it's declining, we need to all work together to promote our school to regain community interest. If the families are unaware of the current situation, we cannot help. Also, hiding these numbers has made many families uncertain about the future of LCCA. That brings me to my next point. What is the future of LCCA? Every business I have worked for has goals. Their employees have future goals. Managers have meetings with employees to go over what the future will look like. So what I challenge all of you to do, especially since we have new board members, I would like to have you guys sit down and discuss the future of what LCCA looks like 1 year from now, 3 years from now, and 5 years from now, and then share it with the families of LCCA and be proud of it. Many people commute hours a day to come to this amazing school. My family spends 2.5 hours a day in the car for our children to attend LCCA. We should be hearing more about our future of the school in order to plan for our future as well. I know numerous families currently living in apartments waiting to hear where the one campus will be located so they can buy a house in the area, just for one example. My last request to the board is to be open and transparent with our families regarding the one campus. At the last board meeting, it was stated that over $300,000 was spent on the engineering and architecture for the one campus project at Pabst Farms. I'm curious to know, without pursuing an open records request, what the exact amount of money it costs our school to have a failed attempt at a one-campus project that was clearly very out of our budget. How did nobody seem shocked to hear how much money was lost at the last meeting? I can tell you firsthand how hard it is to work and receive a $600 to $1,000 check for fundraising for our spirit wear clothing over the first 2 years. When we received $1,200 one time from a sale, I sat in my living room and cried because every single dollar counts for this school. And yet there were nobody up in arms at the last meeting saying that $300,000 is a lot of money.
Erica,
Yes.
are you almost done? We're just
Yeah, I have one. Yep. The loss of what's raised at a high-end gala fundraiser cannot be just thrown away. It cannot happen again. So to summarize, I would like the board to look into the future of our wonderful school as it was their own business, but treat it as it is, a cherished school that has hundreds of invested families driving hours a day to bring their most prized possessions to learn. As a new board, I hope to see many changes, positive changes for our school. Thank you.
Thank you, Erica, and those things you cited will be addressed.
Okay, thank you.
All right. So added a line here, which I called the president's report to be the opening act for Margaret here. So I had a number of things I just wanted to hit on, especially since a lot's gone on here in the last few months. So in no particular order, first I wanted to let you know that Stacy Wren has resigned from the board effective Wednesday. And I just want to make sure you all know there was nothing wrong. A lot of times when somebody resigns right away, you think there's an issue. But it was purely Stacy was, she had plans to move by her family in North Carolina. The stars aligned and it came up much sooner, the opportunity much sooner than she expected. So it was all for good reasons. But just so you know, Stacy is no longer a board member and she will be greatly missed. Secondly, on the one campus, so I was talking to Margaret about some ways where maybe we could, as a board, without interfering in the operations of the school, help her out with certain aspects where maybe we have expertise. And one of the things we identified, and we can look for others, but was the One Campus project. So Margaret has really taken on the project of searching for a new property for the school. That's really doesn't fall within the operations of the school, and we wanted to free up as much time as Margaret, for Margaret and staff to manage the school. So John Wu has agreed to take the lead on the property search process. Obviously, the administration needs to be closely involved because they know best the needs of the school, but it can take out that early step. John can help out there. John has a lot of expertise in real estate. And Margaret also thought it was, important if possible to have someone with a parent perspective involved in the process. So John has agreed to do that, and we appreciate it very much, John.
That's great. See how it goes.
In addition to his video recording duties, too, we should note. Open records training will be on March 10th. Margaret, you weren't, you were obviously invited, but I didn't include you on that email. It will be a public meeting, the open records training, so we will do that here. I do need to talk to you about the logistics of having the school available. But so it'll be on a Monday night. It'll be 6 to 8 on March 10th. So it'll be a regular public meeting. We'll notice that the public will be invited to that meeting. And then the thing which I will explain in a second why, but we had a board delegation policy that Tom had passed out and was posted on the agenda last week. I want to defer the approval process on that board delegation policy, and I'll explain in a second why I didn't put that on the agenda for vote this time. And then before I get into that explanation, Margaret, I want to congratulate you and Brian on your wedding.
Thank you very much.
Your marriage.
Yeah.
I know when I met with Margaret, she was having trouble remembering her last name, so hopefully she got used to that by now. So the other thing I wanted to just mention in terms of agenda items, for the board beyond our typical agenda items is, first of all, I wanted to thank Tom for all the work he put in. I know the last year was, and the more I've read and heard and talked to others, this is really a tough time where you're transitioning from an operating board to a governing board, and you took that on, and I think you really set up the next president.
Good times.
For success, so I appreciate it. And the goal here then is to build on the foundation that that Tom had built. But one of the things I've noticed is during this transition is sometimes the lines between where operating ends and governance begins get blurred, and different people look at it differently. Reasonable people have different definitions of where that line is. And I know because I've asked some people and got different answers. So like these executive limitations, which we approved in October, and this board delegation policy, which came up, those things are part of that defining where that line is, but that's only part of the puzzle. There's more pieces we need to put in place. So I've done a lot of studying here in the last month on this Carver board governance model, which is the one that Hillsdale recommends and the one that Christina and Tom were working with. And after I read it, so many things made sense to me, like, oh, this is how the board delegation fits in. Here's how the executive limitations fit in and why they're written the way that they are. And then I noticed too, when I was reading the board delegation, there was a lot of Carver lingo in there that I might not have understood if I didn't read those books. So to me, it was sort of like enlightening, where it was, my analogy is putting a puzzle together without the box cover, where you can see the pieces and maybe see how a few fit together, but not the big picture. So I think one of the first things we can do in the next few months is to try and put together that puzzle, to fill in the missing pieces, to supplement those ones that we have. And I have a present for all of you that I actually called Hillsdale and ordered these.
Homework.
It is a homework assignment. So rather than reading an entire Carver book, this was a nice summary of the Carver governance model. It's 40 pages, small pieces.
Yes.
Yes.
We don't use those anymore.
So I thought if you can, before the next month's meeting, review this. And some of you may be familiar with it already. Like maybe for those who are familiar, you can review it and just make sure it's fresh in your mind. For those of you who aren't, I thought it was very, very helpful. But I thought if we can all read that, then we can start, developing these policies, defining these lines, but start on the same page. So I wanted to, throw that out there as sort of an upcoming agenda item. And then also, I really want to lean on Hillsdale. I already have for some of this to help us do this. There's some real great expertise and experience there. We've got Dr. Cassidy Klutz. She had talked to her. Gene Judge, of course, is a great resource. And then also tap into some of these other schools. They're out there. They all want to help each other. Just see what some of those best practices are. And I know we've done that before. Christina has done that a lot. She's very connected with these schools, but really try and gather those and decide what are those, see what those are and decide which ones best fit our school. So I really want to tap into those as well. So, but I thought the first step would be to just make sure we sort of understand this model, understand the lingo that goes with it, and then we can have discussions about next steps and approve things like the board delegation process. So I don't know if there's any questions or thoughts or comments.
You got a lot of free time over the last month already.
Not anymore. Yeah, it's been a lot of work, but it's also been very enlightening as well.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So, do you have a question? And I'm real glad you brought this up, because this was actually just maybe couldn't decide if it was coming in as new, or because there are a number of elements of like what was in that draft policy and what I know of the model and how it's used. There's corporate, and then there's Carver, and then there's a lot of schools that use Carver, and then a lot of schools that use it and then decide that it didn't work for them. So, but how? So it's great that we're all on the same page. We'll get on the same page as how it works. How do we operate in terms of actually like figuring things out and discussing things? I mean, I think like some of this stuff, I think we could probably sit in a room and like we'd probably go for hours trying to like come up with a term. And then I know there are public record rules for how we're supposed to communicate with each other, which we'll learn in March. So like how are we going to figure things out? Because I think it's going to take a lot of iteration and discussion, and I just don't know. Like I'm used to like just openly like come up with the thought in my mind. I'm going to throw it out to everyone and we're going to talk about it, which I know there are rules around not doing that. So
Yes.
How are we supposed to function?
Yeah, that is a great question, and it took me a long time to figure that out, because I'm used to in business, you sit down and you talk about something,
Right.
make a decision and move on. But there is very defined rules about how we can do that. So fortunately now we have Georgia and Ellen, who both have expertise in that area, that can help us along with that board training. But we're going to need to do these things at these meetings and do them as efficiently as possible, because everything needs to be done in the public meeting. So, Ellen, I don't know if you
Yeah,
have-
no, it's just working within the confines of what the public meeting laws and records allow us to do.
I was on a commission where we had to do everything in public. I didn't know, I would go into meetings not knowing where my colleagues were gonna be at on a position.
Yeah.
Sometimes it was exciting, sometimes it was nerve-wracking, sometimes, but you work around it and you find a way to do it, and we obviously were able to do it. So it's just having more of that kind of discussion here.
Okay, so this will be the forum, which is fine. Right?
Yeah, so we'll just have that discussion, so the public can hear about it and share our thoughts and,
Cool.
yeah.
Great.
So there's a way to do it, and we'll all learn a little bit more, in a couple weeks too.
Yes, and then, also I'd sort of, for the, the community that's interested in like how the decisions are made and things, it'll be a great chance for them
Yeah.
to hear that.
It is a different kind of mindset, and you get used to it, and, yeah.
Yeah, it's very different, so.
Yeah.
Very counter to how business operates. Public sector is its own animal.
And for our disclosure and having everyone here thought, that's great. It was just a matter of like,
Yeah, you just need to know.
we could sit, I think this group could probably sit here for hours debating on various things of which no one has,
Yeah, we're gonna need to be.
Yeah, we're gonna have to figure that out.
Let's bring snacks.
Yeah, exactly. Right.
I know Tom likes 3-hour meetings. So. I don't want to get your resignation letter now.
Hey.
So anyway, if there's any other questions on that, I just wanted to share that. And then if not, Margaret, I'll turn it over to you for principal's report.
Okay, thank you. There's quite a bit going on in the last month, and just to touch on some positive highlights. Since the last board meeting, we completed upper school exams. We had a celebrate a senior breakfast within that week. We sent students to the Latin convention for the first time, and actually I have some student representatives here to share a little bit about their experience and how that went. So I turn it over to Brayden and Peter for you to share your Latin convention experience. Go ahead and stand and introduce yourself.
Shy? He's a 60-year-old man and an 18-year-old woman.
I'm Peter Vorax. I'm a senior at LCCA this year.
I'm Brayden Seidel. I'm a junior at LCCA this year.
And both of us attended the Latin convention recently. And I'm a Latin 4 student, and you're a Latin 3 student.
I'm a Latin 3 student.
So I don't know, I'll go first, how's that, and then you can speak to your experience afterwards. I was very impressed right off the bat with how everything was set up. We stayed in a very nice hotel with, the rooms were set up very nicely. We were all on the same floor. It was, obviously boys and girls separated. And the separation of the rooms and who went in what room was up to our teachers themselves, but I think they did a very good job with that. So I was actually in a room with Brayden. There was 4 of us total. So it was a lot of fun just, being with friends in the hotel, and there was a little bit of downtime in between certain events. And our room just so happened to have a sliding glass door that led onto a balcony with a staircase that went right to the pool. So that was a lot of fun too. But other than the recreational activities, we participated in many, many events centered around Latin, whether it be impromptu essays, or the main events, which happened on the second day, which were War Machine, in which the schools beforehand build the War Machine of that year and then compete against the other schools, or Curtamen, which is practically Latin trivia, and both of which I participated in. I was specifically there for Curtamen. I was on our Latin 4 Curtamen team, and I found that to be very fun and entertaining, and we put in a lot of work beforehand for that event, and our teacher, Maggie Serstopoulos, was a great help as well. But I really wanted to also mention that I think LCCA was on their best behavior, and the students performed very well, not only, but they also represented LCCA well. We got many compliments from some of the other teachers, and not only were other students, like LCCA as a whole, all of the students were treating the teachers with respect, but they were also treating the other schools with respect. I think that we were probably the best behaved school there. Thank you to the administration for letting us go.
Thank you.
I have a question. How many schools were there?
I want to say seven? Seven or
Around 8, I think.
It was 8,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
8 probably with us.
And where was it?
And in Madison,
Madison,
yes. I, for one, had a very amazing experience. You know when you go to a different country and it's like completely different culture and culture shock? That's what it was for us. We were very underprepared for everything. Magister Stavropoulos, as much as I love him, he did not prepare us for how into it everybody else was.
That's right. He could
He could have prepared us a little bit more, but there was...
He could not have prepared us for Brookfield Academy now.
Yeah, Brookfield Academy was on their A game.
We've heard.
Yes, but no, it was very delightful to see how much passion everybody else had for Latin, the same one that, our school has, and how effective we are, not only grave diggers, but also necromancers of this dead culture and language and people, that we're able to actually bring it back into the forefront in the public light and things that are fun, like Kurtamen or War Machine. Don't get him started on that one. He got angry because we lost, but don't get him started. I for one performed in oratory, impromptu oratory, which was a lot of fun, as well as a costume contest, and I dressed up as Oedipus, and I won 3rd place. So yeah, it was just a very good moment of community for our school, which I think we excel at because of our size. That's one of the things I love about the school is our size. It's not too bloated, it's not too big. It's everybody knows everybody, and we all love each other, and that was very much exemplified and magnified in Latin Convention in the way that we treated each other. And again, we could have done a bit better with the cheers, but for our first Latin Convention, it was great to have brought home a 2nd place trophy overall.
Oh, wow.
So,
Wow.
no, it's an experience I look forward to experiencing again next year, and hopefully that more students will go to, because it truly is a wonderful experience. So, junior.
Well, you're good ambassadors for the
Thank you.
program.
Thank you.
We can recruit more. Thank
Thank
you
you.
for sharing.
Thank you.
Thanks, gentlemen. I appreciate you were here. You're welcome to stay, or you can duck out if you want.
We've got homework to work on.
I know. All right.
I got food to eat.
So our first Latin convention was a huge success, and I also wanted to just give a quick summary of the pulse survey that went out and share with you some of those results. So there are 298 total families at LCCA currently. 233 of them are East families, and 154 families participated in this brief survey, so that's 66% participation on the East campus front. There were just a few brief questions. In general, the culture at LCCA East provides a positive learning environment, and you can see that 96% responded with yes, and gives us a sense of our family's pleasure with the school. In general, the faculty and staff at LCCA East are appropriately communicative. There's a 92% positive response rate there. In general, the academics at LCCA East are, and then there were some definers there. So appropriately challenging had the 86%, and then some preference or some opinion of too challenging, and just a few thinking that it was not challenging enough. Also really good feedback for our faculty and staff. And then overall, I am satisfied with LCCA as my choice for school. 96% of the families that responded to the East survey had a positive affirmation of their choice. So as a quick pulse survey for us in the midpoint of a school year, these are positive results. As far as West Campus, there are, I'm missing my total families. But you recall from the first slide, there are 298 total families at LCCA. 119 of those are West families. A couple of the questions differentiated between brand new families to West or returning families to West. So you can see the breakdown of those numbers there. and we had 74% 74 families participated in the West survey. 100% of new West families participated in the survey, 56% of returning West families, and 62% overall responded to this survey.
And that compares to 66
Of
in
the East.
Okay.
So in returning families only, so families that had students enrolled last year, we asked in general, the culture at West is improving, and have 68% response to that, and a 19% of no opinion. But we are, as maybe some of you know, from last year's extensive survey, we had some feedback on need to improve culture at West, and we have some initiatives this year, like the house system and a dean of students. And so we're just pulse checking to see if those things are having a positive impact. The new families were asked in general, the culture provides a positive learning environment, and there was 100% response of yes to that question of the 15 new families that responded. Then all families were asked in general about the faculty and staff being appropriately communicative. There's positive 88% there. In general, the academics at West, and you can see again the breakdown of the different spectrums. Appropriately challenging being 67%, too challenging being 29%, and not challenging enough being that small sliver still of opinion in this question. And then all families also were just given the opportunity to express their satisfaction with LCCA as their choice, and we had 89% of families being satisfied with their choice of sending their students to LCCA. And there again just is the breakdown of participation, and as an administrative team we were happy to get those results. Again, as a reminder, we will put out a significantly more extensive survey towards the end of the school year in the spring, and I am already working with the representative who I worked with last year to make sure that survey is polished. There was some feedback last year about some question structures, and then we also want to include a couple additional questions about the initiatives at West. So we're adding questions about the house system, the Celebrate a Senior program, and a couple other things. So we're working on that, and we'll have that ready to go before the end of the school year.
Question for you.
Mm-hmm.
This was a newer survey, we haven't used these questions in the past, or we have?
I don't think we surveyed in year one, if I recall. This is a new survey. We did an extensive survey mid-year last year and determined that we wanted to give families a full year's worth of academic school year experience, or at least through the spring, to gather and formulate an opinion or a perspective on things. And so we decided to give that extensive survey towards the end of the school year and just do a smaller, quick pulse survey for a quick sense of satisfaction or not midway through the year. So that was this survey.
The reason why I asked the question is just making sure that we're able to measure progress along
Right.
different campuses. So how will these results inform what we're doing with our more comprehensive survey?
This survey will be compared to a mid-year pulse survey moving forward.
Okay.
Our end-of-year extensive survey that we'll give in the spring of this year, we'll be able to compare those results to that same extensive survey. It's almost a duplicate, like I said, with just some added questions about new initiatives and some tweaking of language to clarify some questions that we had received feedback on as being kind of gray. So that's where we'll be able to do comparative analysis. Okay.
Good response rate.
Yes, very pleased.
It's a good baseline.
Yes.
I have questions on the survey, but I'll let you finish and I'll come back.
Okay. So there were a couple other special events. We had an all-school spirit game. We had an 8th grade and 11th grade trivia activity in the upper school. There were some casual days and some crazy days and some 100th day celebrations for the littlest elementary kids and some Valentine's red and pink things going on. So quite a bit of fun happening at both campuses some monthly updates. We have hired a new accounting clerk. As you know, that accounting clerk position has been lingering out there as an open search for quite some time, and we're thrilled to have Patricia Fan joining the business office in that capacity. And then I do want to skip to the Hillsdale update. The teacher support team visited at the end of January. They spent Tuesday in classrooms and Wednesday meeting with teachers to discuss feedback. I had a follow-up conversation with them. They will compile a visit report for you all, and then Randy and I will have a meeting with them once that report is in your hands, and then we can share any additional comments that they have. But their feedback is complimentary. It's fun, actually, for me to have them because it's mostly the same group of people that have been supporting us since the beginning. And so they see year over year, and they're just really complimentary and impressed with the growth in our teachers. And also that one of their comments in my conversation with them was they're just really impressed at the growth in our students, how much background knowledge they've gained just in the last 4 years, 3.5 years of instruction. So I'm looking forward to their visit report and to share and discuss it with you. Additionally, Dr. Wozniak and I just had the opportunity to attend the school leader conference last week in Hillsdale. So Monday through Wednesday, we were in sessions and presentations. This is the first Hillsdale leader conference where a representative from every single school in the network was present. So it was a really much bigger than it has been in years past. And we were able to talk and share ideas, and some of the other leaders presented and they brought in different presenters. So it was really, really a great time for both of us to just grow our own professional network, but get really good ideas and encouragement as well. And then we attended the job fair at Hillsdale, which is an annual event as well, and presented our opportunities to the juniors and seniors, maybe looking to teach after they graduate from college. So it was a great time, and we enjoyed the opportunity to be there.
Were there a lot of prospective teachers?
Well, Hillsdale is growing their classical education department. They're actually building a brand new building on campus that's geared just toward their classical education program. So right now, I don't know that the interest or that they are necessarily putting out a strong number of people interested in education, but I do believe that they'll be growing that program, and the interest will grow. So we have several Hillsdale alums on staff here, so that's a fun opportunity for us to build our team. Moving into academics and enrollment, as required in the board calendar, I give an update on high school GPA statistics at this point in the school year, and actually I'm going to call on the upper school assistant principal, Dr. Wozniak, to speak to this data.
Just wanted to give a little context with the GPA distribution at this point. This represents the semester 2 GPA for this year, or I'm sorry, semester 1 GPA for this year, which includes quarter 1, quarter 2, and the first semester exam. So the reason we look at this right now is to just get a gist of how things are going in the high school. It's difficult to take a GPA like this, or average GPA, with a small distribution with our size of school and generalize it from year to year at this point. That would be better done at cumulative GPAs at graduation time, which of course this is our first graduation year. So as the school grows and gets bigger and we have more years of graduates, there'd be a little bit more significant year-to-year analysis of graduating GPAs. That's not quite, it's not really valid to extend analysis from year to year or even sometimes semester to semester at this point. But that being said, we're happy with the distribution right now with the first semester grades. You can see everything, we're kind of skewed toward the A's and B's. 58% of the school right now in the first semester had earned either a medium to high B or A of some kind. Embedded in that are 9 4.0 averages across the school. That's 10% of our students have a 4.0 for the first semester. So we feel very comfortable and good about these numbers at this time. We also noticed one other trend that isn't really depicted here when you pull it out a little bit is the grades as they go up, 9, 10, 11, and 12, that graph gets progressively shifted toward the A's. So the 9th graders as being first year are where some of the lower grades creep in. And then we can see, again, it's a little suspect. You have to be a little careful about stating trends at this point, this early and that kind of thing. But we are seeing, as the grades go up, as the grade levels go up, the grades are getting higher, which means typically we have our junior year is one of the most challenging years, which is typical in high school. The junior year is out of those 9 4.0s, 5 of those 4.0s are in our junior class right now. So taking into account the being careful with looking at GPAs, a lot of that data looks very healthy and good to us at this point.
Thank you, Dr. Wozniak. Additionally, at this point in the school year, we have submitted our January count to the Department of Public Instruction. And so you can see here just our per pupil counts, what we submitted in September each year thus far, what we've submitted in January each year thus far, and the difference from September to January. So that's how DPI determines our per pupil payment rate or revenue rate.
The growth there is related to adding a new grade every year over the last couple of years, right?
Yes, and adding a section to some of the elementary grade levels each year. So we originally had only 2 sections, 2 classes per grade level as we started, but now we have 3 in kindergarten through 4th. So there's plus growing the high school as well. So there's a couple different factors that play into that. Some additional enrollment information at this point in the school year. This is our current enrollment. So our totals in the grade levels, we are no longer making offers. Our wait list has, at this point, nearly depleted, which is great because it starts over every year anyway. And then this is our current, this is updated since the report I sent you. So when I shared, I had the numbers as of February 12th, but I think it's almost 20 higher. So I thought a quick update today was wise. We have 152 applicants, and there's the grade level breakdown of those looking to participate in the March 1st lottery. So we accept applicants for the March 1st lottery up until the last day of February. So I do expect to see a few more, whether it's significantly more or just a few more. I do expect to see more come in between now and the end of the month before we run the lottery on March 1st.
How many can you accept?
That is, I'm still working on the numbers. We ask current families to communicate their commitment to return. And so we are working on understanding which families are deciding to move on from LCCA and which families are staying. And then I take that information and I look at classroom space and what I might be able to work to make as much facility space as possible. And then I know how many seats per grade level I can offer. So that's all happens within the next 2 weeks. Yeah.
So Margaret,
Yes.
What was the cutoff mid-February for returning families to?
They were to complete their commitment to return survey by the 15th, and then they have until Friday to complete their registration and pay their student user fee for the upcoming school year. So by Friday of this week, we'll have closed out and we will know the families that are moving on from LCCA and the families that are currently committed to return.
So besides the formal last step, you've had mid-month, we have the commitment should be in?
Yes, yes. So as of right now, with a few outstanding paperwork and registration and fees to be paid, we had 50 students communicate they would not be returning.
Okay, great, thank you.
And the just for my sake, sorry, the difference between the wait list and the applications list there? Can you explain that?
So the wait list was for the 24-25 school year. It's now moot.
Okay.
And the applications are for students interested in becoming new students at LCCA in the 25-26 school
Okay.
year. And once the lottery runs on March 1st, seats will be offered, and then the wait list begins again.
Okay, so the wait list will start over.
Exactly.
And based on kind of the preliminary numbers of 50 families leaving, you'll have about I'm making
50
numbers,
students.
or
It's not
excuse me,
50 families, yeah.
leaving. In a new kindergarten, you might have 100 new students. Is that I mean, I'm not holding you to the numbers, just trying to get ballpark. Does that add up? Is that how that would typically work?
Probably.
Okay.
I have to determine if I haven't looked at all the numbers, but one of the determining factors to consider is how many fourth grade students are returning, and do I need to maintain 3 sections of that grade level, or can fourth grade roll into only 2 sections of fifth grade, which is what I currently have.
Sure.
And because of space constraints, if I could, then I would likely stay at only 2 sections of fifth grade if the numbers allow me to do that, which means I wouldn't offer any of the fourth grade seats that have moved on, because I'm not trying to now fill them
Yeah.
again. So yeah.
Understood.
Okay.
I just want to understand how you transition from the applications to a wait list.
Yeah. Yep.
So, Margaret, how does this compare like to in prior years? I know that we only have a few, but like how 152 at this point in the process, is that comparable to what we've seen in the past?
It's interesting. The first year obviously was incredible because we were filling a whole K through 9 school. And the second year additionally was also quite high. I would have to look back at those numbers. I don't have those in my head. And I actually don't even have in my head what last year's application count was. Mrs. Knapp, do you have any? I know the numbers game right now is incredible. So, but I could look back at last year's board report at this time and get you that information, or it would be on board docs too. But this whole count is in that report.
Okay. So if I just look at board docs last year's at this time, I can see. I'll do that.
Yep. Okay.
And dovetailing off of Randy's question, what was the number of students that attritioned last year? Approximately.
Yeah, I don't have that in my head either. I would have to look
I'll
that
go back
up.
to 40.
Yeah.
Well, so kind of related, but a higher level. How do we think about like what actually matters? So, for example, so those are numbers, and I think at the beginning of the school, when you start a school and you worry about like number of enrollment, per pupil funding, all that sort of thing, you're building a thing that requires X amount of cost. There's fixed costs. You need a certain number of teachers. There's all that. So there's a certain degree, like you worry about numbers because of that. We're sort of past that. And so now, like, how do we think about, like, of all this, what matters? Because, for example, I'm not saying that this is how you think about it or it's the right way, but just differences. You look at, we have 12th grade, you have 15 students. The high school, the numbers are much smaller than what we have in the lower grades, who then, in theory, should all, if everyone stays, you have a larger number of people that will come up in the high school than we do that are going to be graduating out. And so to a certain extent, one could argue that, enrollment or new enrollment and new applications and wait lists, whatever it is for the later grades, doesn't necessarily matter as much. And so how do you think about what you should be concerned about and what is good or what is bad? Because I could say there are arguments to be made that I think people have seen, or I've seen, at the beginning, waitlist numbers were huge. Now they're probably smaller. But I can make arguments for why that's actually a good thing, rather than anything to be concerned about. So how do we actually think about that? How do we judge whether or not any of this is good or bad?
That was a weighted question, Mr. Wu. Let me see if I can whittle it down. I think our marketing strategies have aimed at maintaining interest in the earliest elementary grades, so kindergarten and first grade, to start strong and build a student body that is our own, for lack of a better term.
Mm-hmm.
We've also targeted the 9th and 10th grade, hoping to acquire students that would still be able to meet our graduation requirements. There is difficulty in enrolling into 11th and 12th grade simply by nature of the graduation requirements we have and what students maybe are lacking in those last 2 grades and the ability to make up the difference in time. And then we've targeted 8th grade in a sense that we want to retain as much of our own current 8th grade as we can, and also entice that transitional part for most schools. 8th graders are graduating from their K-8 Catholic school, or they're done at their middle school, and it's a decision point for parents. And so those, I think, are the benchmark targets to sort of track as far as popularity goes and interest goes. There is something called the 8th grade melt that is a typical occurrence in any K-12 institution. You are bound to lose a higher percentage of your 8th grade students than in other grade levels year over year because of that transitional point and interest in high schools that have different things to offer or greater programming to offer, etc. So we keep tabs on that fluctuation or that grade level as well in that regard. But to your point, we also, when looking at numbers, consider protecting our culture. So a grand influx of a lot of students into any particular grade level, while it brings in numbers and revenue, you have to weigh the cost of that benefit with the repercussion on the culture that we're working to establish and we're working to define. Culture is a high priority for faculty and staff, administration, but also for parents. They're coming here for the culture that our mission defines. And so we keep careful track of that and take into careful consideration what a large influx into any given grade level might do there. So there is quite a bit to consider beyond the numbers in that regard. And those are just some of the ways that the administrative team is looking at these things.
Right, that's good. Helpful to hear.
One clarification, there were 165 people on the application list last year.
At this time?
At this time. Oh,
Okay.
on the February meeting last
Okay.
year.
So about the same. Thanks for looking that up. Anything else on those numbers? Because I just also want to draw your attention to some of the events we've been hosting. For the first time this year, we did have a shadow day where we welcomed interested rising 9th grade and rising 10th graders to come in for the morning of a school day. We buddied them with a student, and they went from class to class with that student. 8th graders followed 9th graders in their class schedule, but then they had lunch with 8th graders who would be their peers and their classmates next year. And we had a positive turnout and positive response to that experience, and so we'll look to incorporate that and maintain that as one of our enrollment strategies moving forward. We've hosted a couple information nights where I give a presentation and then we give tours to families that show for that event. And thus far, we've had one pop-in event, which is really just an open house, and we give tours. At the West Campus, we set up some booths in the gym about athletics and extracurriculars and things. And so we have 2 more of those. We are intentional about the March 8th final pop-in being after the lottery, so that families who do receive a seat, if they haven't had an opportunity to get into a building or come in and speak with teachers and administration, they have a chance at that point to come in and put eyes on our building and our facilities. So those things are ongoing, and Mrs. Knapp is our registrar, and Mrs. Lefersky have done a great job in marketing those and planning those, and then faculty and staff, as well as some students, facilitate the tours at all of those events. I am sharing with you the 25-26 calendar highlights. As part of this point in the school year, we do put out a glimpse at the upcoming school year's calendar, the first day of school, when the breaks will be. As the new school year approaches over the summer, we put out a far more extensive essential dates calendar. But for now, we give a breakdown of just the important dates on the calendar. So this will disseminate to families tomorrow in the Revere. And there's one thing to note this year. Our spring break is a week earlier than the Oconomowoc School District and the Kettle Moraine School District. We were aligned with the Kettle Moraine School District when they publicized their calendar a month ago, and then they made a change. We are aligned with the Sussex Hamilton School District. The way that Easter falls this year made the scope of our academic calendar a little tricky because we do start a year in advance of area public districts, not a year, a week in advance, and we end earlier than they do. It's a little difficult to align our spring breaks with theirs in this academic school year because of where Easter falls. So we will break the week of March 23rd through 27th, and we'll come back for Monday through Thursday. We'll break again for Good Friday and Easter Monday, and then return again. Then we have graduation possibilities, just because we're working on securing a venue for that event. We did this last year as well. We gave the weekend, and then once we have the venue secured for Saturday or Sunday, we'll finalize the date for graduation as this school year concludes and the summer approaches. Beyond that, this calendar mirrors this current school year on its layout and how things flow. So, wanted to make you aware of that. I also want to make you aware of some important information that is brand new to LCCA this year due to recent legislation called Act 20. It has to do with literacy and reading instruction, and I'm going to call on our Director of Student Services to talk you through and kind of give you an overarching understanding of what the state law requires of us in Act 20.
Thank you. So Act 20 is a state law that's aimed to improve early reading skills in grades 4K through 3rd grade. There are several components of it, but I want to draw your attention to the standardized assessments that we're required to give. Public schools are required to give a standardized assessment 3 times a year. We started in winter of this year, and we'll do it again in spring. There is a one-on-one administration portion of it, and there's also a computer-based portion. For students that score below the 25th percentile on those assessments, we are required to give a diagnostic test too. So we're using the FastBridge and some additional subtests from there to assess those students. And then the state also requires us to develop reading plans for students that fall below the 25th percentile. Those are shared with families. Our interventionists, classroom teachers, special education teachers are all part of that reading plan to help the student meet the next benchmark. And I'm really pleased to share that only 9% of our students required a reading plan. So when you're expecting 25 students to hit the 25th percentile, the fact that only 9% of ours fell below that mark is really something to be proud of.
Thank you, Mrs. Gajewski. While the Act 20 requires 3 times per year testing, because this is the initial year, most schools are only getting 2 rounds of assessment in this first year, just to clarify that. But we are also really pleased with the fact that our literacy essentials programming, our curriculum that Hillsdale provides and suggests for us, has our students literate very early on and performing really well on this. Lastly, we come to the financials for the month. You received the income statement and the budget versus actual report and the bank reconciliation report. There's not too many nuances to those reports this month. Our revenue included some special education state aid, some special education federal aid, some enrichment fees, and the final day of giving donations in the amount of $58,908.66. Our expenditures were our typical purchase services, monthly payments to facility vendors, third-party employment agencies, and some additional one-campus expenditures. In the bank reconciliation report, you'll notice that total cash on hand was a little over $2.3 million, which is 112 days cash on hand. Last year at this time, the total cash on hand was almost 1.9, which is an increase. We have $427,637 more at this point than we did at last year at this time when it was 105 days cash on hand.
Just, could you remind us again, Margaret, if you know what is best practice for cash on hand is, or what's considered strong?
90 days cash on hand is considered strong. If we're looking for financing at any given time for one campus purchase or expenditures, 100 to 110 days is strong. So we're at 112 days. So if at any given moment we want to be ready to ask for financing, we're pleased to have that statistic and that data to support our request.
Thank you.
In the budget versus actual report, you'll see, and again, I just wanted to remind you that the salaries budget versus actual is at 46.7%, even though we're at 58% of the school year. And again, that's because of a 21-month pay versus a 24-month pay. So that will all balance out as we advance towards the end of the fiscal year.
Balance on meaning it'll get to 100.
Yes.
Oh.
Which may be slightly lower than 100 because we do not have a facilities assistant, but we do have a salary for that budgeted in, so we may fall slightly short of the 100% just for that reason. Additionally, I wanted to draw your attention to the 23-24 annual report. It is on our website. This is a trifold, so you're seeing sort of the front of the folds and the insides of the folds, but it is linked on our website, and we are using this and sharing this with past donors and potential donors as we make requests and excite people to continue their support and participate in the upcoming gala.
Question.
Yep.
On the pre-ACT tests, I see that
No, go
the
ahead.
forward test, I see that we're a little lower
Where
than
did mine go?
Waukesha K through 12. Is that because we don't typically teach to the test, or I'm just kind of curious? I know it's not a huge different deal probably, but.
How does our ACT score compare to?
I said ACT, but I'm sorry, I meant the forward testing. It's just slightly lower than Waukesha K through 12. So I'm just curious if we don't teach the test, or why is that score a little lower than, we do very well in pre-ACT.
There's a couple different factors, being last year was the third year that students at our school took the forward exam. Some contributing factors would be ease on the Chromebook, and also just they're 3 years into a new school, and so we do expect to see some of our numbers climb, but beyond that, the comparative data the administrative team would say that it's still a product of being a young school. My final report is sideways. Sorry about that. But this is the report sharing our one campus expenses up until this point. You can see that the expenses span the 4 years that we've been in existence, because a search for a single site for us has been a process over the 4 years. But I believe, John, you referenced or inquired about these expenses at the last board report, and at our meeting upcoming with our owner's representative, we can dig a little bit more into these numbers. But this shows the surveying fees required to test the Paps Farm site, for example. It has the architectural in order to entice the Village of Summit to potentially rezone, we had to have renderings of the building. Those were very expensive. And the legal fees that go into preparing for bond underwriting, all of those things contribute to the costs here. And you can see how those break down. And it will give us a sense of potential costs moving forward as we, when we find additional new opportunities or potential sites to investigate.
Just, I didn't see it ahead of time. What, how much were legal bills? Just curiosity.
I'm really sorry for the
looks like about-
sideways.
It looks like it's about
About-
85,000.
Yeah. Thank you.
I've got.
Yeah, better than me.
I'm looking
And that
upside down on it.
concludes my report for the evening.
I had a couple of questions, I think Skylar does too. I need to make sure I post that report since it wasn't posted before, so can you get that to the final
Oh, this
report?
new one, yes.
Yeah,
Yep.
so- Yeah, since Stacy isn't here, I want to make sure I get that posted.
Yeah, could I get that, just email that to you tonight?
Yeah, that's
Okay.
perfect. So Skylar, you got it?
Yeah, just a question on the update on One Campus. I know John's gonna be, taking on the lead there, but, could you just explain I get calls, from other parents, asking about any progress, so could you just explain, since the Paps Farm, since we, decided that wasn't the right avenue, can you give us just a quick summary, a minute, of, what we've been doing? I know, but maybe the community doesn't necessarily know.
Our owner's rep is working on our behalf. There were two, since the Paps Farms property, there were two additional possibilities that quickly became nothing. And we have determined, I think we just discussed at the last board meeting, the need to hire a broker to really aggressively continue the search on our behalf. We have requests for proposals out to, I believe, 3 different brokers that came. Your recommendation, our owner's rep provided a recommendation, and then I believe a recommendation came in from Christina Vorax. I have to double check where my third recommendation came from. And so we're looking to pursue those. We paused on that after my conversation with Randy and a request for more board involvement. And so now that John can be involved, he can sit in on those proposal interviews and help us determine the right broker to assist us in our search. But as that avenue continues, we're also considering, and I would put this under the umbrella of One Campus, because while we're searching for One Campus and it's delayed slightly to our original hope for a start date at a new location, it forces us to also consider how are we going to make our current 2 facilities last us a little longer, if you will. So I'm also right now in conversation with the mobile unit company that gave us the 10 classrooms in the back of this property, inquiring if there's any possibility that we could maybe put on 2 more classrooms here.
Stack them on top of each
Right,
other.
we're just gonna find
Partnership.
space to add those. We need to have conversations with the municipalities for permits and if there's sewer hookup allowances, if there's enough water for us to put. So all of that is happening currently. While having those conversations, we also took the gentleman to West, and we looked at the backyard of West. I've also had conversations with our 2 landlords, so the church at West and the owners of the East property. They're both on board with us potentially utilizing mobile classrooms at both campuses if necessary. So I'm investigating that. Mobile units at the West campus would not be for the upcoming school year, but for the 26-27 school year. And again, there was a lot of legwork needed on that front as well, municipality-wise. So we're getting creative in our plans, while still aggressively pursuing one-campus opportunities. We're also thinking about ways to make these current facilities last. Some updates, like just things that we've been talking about. These are not promises or guarantees, but just ideas that have come to mind, like, well, let's replace all the bubblers in these buildings because we're going to be here for longer than we thought, and they just need an update. Things like that, like what are the improvements that need to be made at our two campus locations as well in order for us to be content here for a little longer than we originally anticipated.
I would just ask, maybe even if it's a 30-second, if we could have a regular update on any progress, John, on that as part of our board. Because I think the community is really interested. Like I said, I feel the number of calls. Even if the progress is we continue to try to find properties, I think that would be, worth sharing, because I think there's, no information is. That's why I feel the calls, I think.
Yeah. Well, beyond, we're doing the best we can to search. I have no information.
No, I understand. I'm
Yeah.
just saying on a regular basis, if that's the update, that's the update. I think that would be helpful.
Standing agenda.
We can do that, and if there's no update, then
Yeah.
no update.
Yeah.
Well, actually, I guess along the lines, because it sounds like at some point I'm gonna be the subject of a lot of inquiry, which is fine. Has there ever been, and I think, to be honest, like I just never, even in the past, probably didn't pay as much attention to what was going on one campus than others. Has there ever been like a broad discussion or presentation, memo, whatever, on what drives what we care about for one campus? I mean, there's always like practical realities. Say like we have 564 students now. We're gonna have, if we continue to get, we have 75 applications for kindergarten. If we maintain capacity for say 150 per class in kindergarten, and like that naturally progresses. So you're gonna have a number to solve for. So we have to.
We have a target of 850.
Yeah, great. Yeah. So it's like, okay, we need a building that can target at least can accommodate 850. But then anything else around, I know in the past, I think the previous project, there was contemplation of you have enough land for athletic facilities. And then one would think it's like, okay, we have athletics, okay. But then I think it's been sometimes when we evaluate some of the possibilities that come up, kind of make these trade-off decisions, okay, may not be able to accommodate that, which may be fine. But then it kind of would say, okay, athletics or being able to have a playing field of some sort is kind of less of a priority than other things. I just don't know what any of those real priorities are, other than maybe they're not, like, it sounded like accommodate 850 kids. I think that was broad-based, like somewhere saw that someplace. But I don't know if I know, and that could very well be out of ignorance and not paying attention. But I don't know if I've ever seen anything that says, we're striving for like this type of setup because of these reasons. And by the way, it's fine if that isn't the case.
Well, I think the board the collective of this group has turned over significantly
Right.
since the maybe original board and the original defining. I was tasked to find a property that would house a K-12 institution of 850 students with the possibility for athletics, and those athletics being field space for soccer, baseball. When we were designing a rendering, we shot for the ideal, so we put tennis in there and a track. But I think the perspective of the previous board, which I don't mean to speak for them, but my understanding was that we would make compromises and accommodations within reason based on what property options were available. So I think we learned a lot in the pursuit of the Paps Farms property as far as expense and cost, and it gave us an understanding that the ideal of the athletics dream is probably not within our means, and so there was some scaling back on what athletic facilities were realistic for us and our financial capabilities. There are some requirements for charter schools as far as location, like adjacent to state highway and things like that. But beyond those things, I don't know that there is any board documentation of parameters or absolutes.
Okay. So to summarize, so would it be, so it's kind of fair to say, sort of to date, as far as you've ever been tasked with, kind of the parameters are 850 students, would be nice to have soccer, baseball, what have you, of maybe some location parameters.
Mm-hmm. Yes, there's some boundaries within, not this distance east or this distance west, north, south, there's.
But that's really about it.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not to say it's like, okay, we also want to accommodate a facility for a science maker space or anything like that.
Right.
It's just, okay.
I would say also within institution buildings within a classical, with a classical philosophy and framework in mind.
There's a decent amount of information that was accumulated that you'll learn as you get involved, and then maybe once you absorb that, get your legs under you, you can share that as appropriate. I had a couple questions, but anybody else?
Oh, sorry, I just shut it down.
That's okay, I didn't need the reference. Well, maybe for one of them I do, but.
I have a question.
Yeah, go ahead.
Has there been any discussions with the local Arrowhead feeder schools that may be combining? So I hear some chatter out there that there's, or as I'm sure.
As far
you're
as
aware, there's-
like buildings becoming available?
Yes.
The current neighboring districts, both Oconomowoc and KM, have buildings available within their districts, but they've taken action to write into the deed that it would not be sold to any entity that will run it as a school.
I'm sorry, let me restate. How about the Arrowhead School District?
To my knowledge, we don't know of anything in the Arrowhead School District, but I can check with our owner's rep and see if he's heard anything.
Okay.
So I don't know. You've heard rumblings?
I have.
Okay, I'll tip him off.
Mhm.
Well, I mentioned this to Christina when she was still on the board, and I think it may be worth potentially pursuing. I don't want to take away from our one campus strategy, but, the idea that schools are sitting vacant and their taxpayer dollars that, have gone for those buildings, my view is that, I'm not sure that that's appropriate, and, if those buildings could accommodate at least some of our needs as it relates to school, I think, there are certainly organizations in Wisconsin that would take that case on our behalf at no cost to the school, and pursue that in court, and I think that would be something that would be worthwhile. That's outside of the one campus project, but I think that's something as a board that, we gotta pursue all avenues, and that's leaving something on the table, and, I think, there's certainly some opportunity there. And it sends a message not only for this community, but other communities, I think, within Wisconsin, schools like us that may be struggling with finding the right campus. There's a perfectly good, facility somewhere that could be utilized. And so I think, as a policy matter, that I don't know if there's an appetite among other board members, but it's something that I'd like to see us at least consider.
Go for it. That sounds great.
Conversation.
Yeah, we should let John know about those things, so he can pursue them. So before I ask mine, any other questions? Okay. I had three things for you, Margaret. So one, I wanted to ask you on the surveys. I know there was a couple of questions about the survey confidentiality, and you made it crystal clear that the survey results were not confidential this time. But I know when we look at the results, one of the questions was, are we getting objective results? Because the parents who maybe aren't going to rate it as high might be reluctant to put that down in a non-confidential survey. Is there a way to do this mid-year survey, not the year-end, but the mid-year, similar type survey, but in a non-confidential way to address that?
We can look into a platform. When we determined to put that out, the platform that we have access to did not allow for It turned out, though, that if parents just didn't enter their name, it ended up being, it wasn't connected to their email address then, so for the most part, it was anonymous.
Confidential?
Yeah.
Okay.
But I had
But
no
they
way
wouldn't
to
have known.
guarantee that when I put it out, so
Yeah.
I did communicate on the forefront that it would
Yeah.
not be anonymous. And we were pleased with the response rate nonetheless, but I understand and received some communication as well with some discomfort at answering those questions without anonymity. So we will find a way. It just was the current platform that we designed it in did not guarantee anonymity.
Yes, and I did see the communication, so I think it's great that you made it clear to your knowledge that it was confidential
Yeah.
for anybody who was concerned about that. Secondly, I wanted to ask you on the capital campaign. I know we had an advisor we were engaged with. I was just wondering if you could give us a progress report on that.
The capital campaign or the strategic planning?
Our fundraising
Yeah.
advisor, maybe I used the wrong word, but.
So Tim is his name, and he is working on our behalf. Without a site on the horizon, the intention, it has stalled essentially a rollout of a capital campaign, but he's still building and determining when a silent phase would begin, trying to get a sense of our anticipated,
Okay.
progress. He's also working to make relationships with potential donors for the gala as well, and has shifted his attention a little bit to that right now. But I can ask and have a capital campaign report for the next month's board meeting.
Yeah, I just think it would be interesting to kind of know how that's progressing along the way. And then the last question I wanted to ask you was on when we did the grade points, we showed in the survey results, and those looked great, and Eric had mentioned they're really encouraging. I was wondering for that smaller group that was struggling with the lower grade point, what is the avenue for those kids to get the extra help or to get their grade points up? I guess, how are those kids treated or handled? That's my question.
We have opportunities within the school day for students to meet with teachers to receive support or extra help, as well as opportunities before the school day begins and then at the end of the school day. Oftentimes, teachers extend invitations for students to stop by during their study hall block. Teachers also oftentimes make themselves available over the lunch hour. You'll see a small group session going on in a classroom with a teacher who's identified students who need some extra support. So we also have one teacher geared toward math support intentionally. She's available at different times throughout the school day when math classes are in session and also during those study hall hours. So our avenue is to make the teachers available and give the students opportunities to seek out that extra support, assistance, maybe one more review or recap of a lesson, one more opportunity to ask questions about a homework assignment or whatnot.
Okay. So, yeah, that was my question, that the avenue, and then it sounds like they're being encouraged.
Mhm.
Obviously, you can't make them do it.
Right, encouraged and sometimes invited.
Okay, great, thank you for that. All right, anything else for Margaret? Give her a break, we had lots of questions for her.
All right, great, thank you.
Thank you, Margaret. All right, so we'll move on to our new business, our staff salaries and benefits. See that? So would anyone like to make a motion to approve the 2025-26 staff salaries and benefits?
So moved.
Thank you. So it's moved and seconded to approve the 2025-2026 staff and salaries benefits projections. Is there any debate?
Go ahead, John.
Can I just ask a couple questions? And I was just, in looking at this, just in the 25-26 new employees, the allocation for salaries, like let's just say like 50,000, and then the new employee benefits like 22.8, which like on a percentage basis seems a little bit high. I understand there's a certain level of benefits that comes kind of like at a fixed cost per person. And so is that the attribution, or it just seems, even compared to the other allocations here, the percentage of that it comprises seems a bit much.
When we estimate at the greatest,
Okay, this is
most
still a bit.
expensive
okay.
plan at the family, just because we're,
Yeah.
being conservative and planning for the most extreme, which is everybody comes on, takes all the benefits and takes it on the family plan. So that's where that
Okay.
number comes from.
And this is like, it's like a one employee ad for a new employee?
Right,
Okay.
might be 1.5.
Okay.
I don't know if there's any other questions. You answered my only one before with the enrollment projections, so. Anything else?
You did kind of go over this last meeting,
Yes,
which was helpful.
great.
I'm just getting my script up.
Okay, okay.
I can't relate at all to what you're doing right now. Sorry.
Thank you for suggesting and scripted out there for us.
Mhm.
All right, so the question is to approve the 2025-2026 staff salaries and benefits. Those in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
The ayes have it, the motion is carried. All right, so let's move on to the accounting policies. Anyone like to make a motion to adopt the revised accounting policy?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. Any debate?
I actually have a question about this. Not knowing if you are approving a treasurer on the board, it's possible that this policy would need some tweaking to include language about a board treasurer. I'm not sure if that's the case, if you would approve it with an amendment to include the information about a newly appointed treasurer position.
That is an excellent question, and we do plan on doing that.
Okay.
However, I was thinking about it and thinking that we don't, really it's a board responsibility. I was thinking we could leave the revision in the event we don't have a treasurer, the position's vacant temporarily in the future, we could leave it in as board
Okay.
versus treasurer specifically.
Okay.
Understanding that the treasurer would take the lead on that. Does that make sense to everyone?
Yep.
Thank you.
I did have a couple questions on this. That first page where we list all the, it's not the first page, the third page where we list the contact information of all the people involved. Is that necessary to have on there? I'm just wondering if it's not required or necessary, we just don't have to keep updating it because it gets outdated so quickly.
Mrs. Curry, do you know contact information required?
I wouldn't think so. I think you have the board positions posted on the website, and they're documented in the board minutes, and so I think it's just gonna be up to the board as to whether or not you would like that.
Okay.
EIN numbers on there too.
So does anybody see a reason that needs to stay on there? I'm just thinking it's one less thing to keep updated. We have the information elsewhere if needed.
No, if accounting's okay with them.
Okay, so then we'll remove that. And then I had a couple other questions as I read through it. And I noted my page numbers on here, slight enough to make you sit here and watch me look around for it. There's a couple things that I thought maybe needed to be adjusted. Some of these are, if Lori did this, if it's a Lori question, but under 9.2, it says tangible assets costing less than $5,000, having an estimated useful life in excess of 1 year are recorded as an expense in the school's financial statements. And then above, it says capital asset is defined as a single item that has a useful life in excess of 1 year and a cost of 10,000 or more. So I'm wondering if that 5,000 should be updated to 10,000 and just didn't get updated. Because we have tangible assets of 5,000 are recorded as an expense. And then if they're 10,000, they're capitalized,
So it's math.
but there's nothing in between.
Will we double check that?
Yeah, I'll look into,
Some of the language we were given by DPI, if you recall our monitoring consultation. So we actually received this from them, so we will double check if that discrepancy needs to be updated.
It looked to me like it might have just been a
An
number that was
oversight,
missed,
sure.
but, so if we could check into that.
Absolutely.
And then the other one I noticed was in section 7.1, and it was the last paragraph in that section. It says, "The board will present overall liquidity to the board and be responsible for authorizing repayment." And I know that's because we took out treasurer, that
Mhm.
now it doesn't seem to make sense. So
Mhm.
I'm just wondering if we could just change the language on that, like the board will review overall liquidity of the school and be responsible for, to make it make sense. Because it doesn't make sense the way it is written right now.
Sure.
But if we're gonna keep.
I know the removal of that treasurer title.
Yeah, so those are the three things I noticed that we.
The board will review.
Look into or adjust.
Okay. Do you pass it with amendments to those changes, or do I need to bring it back to you in a month's time with those revisions made?
Well, we could renew the motion if we all agree on it, although we have the discrepancy, but subject to the discrepancy being modified, renew the motion and adopt it pursuant to our discussion today with the, subject to the modification.
Okay.
And then we bring it back, but, so I modified my motion.
So I'm removing the contact information, just to be clear, and I'm confirming either an update to that discrepancy or a maintenance of that discrepancy, and I'm updating the sentence of the 7.1 paragraph to read, "The board will review overall liquidity." Is that correct? Okay.
All right, so what do I need to do here, Ellen?
So I'm in, renew the motion, so second.
Second.
And then discussion, and then vote. So any discussion,
Okay.
We're already there.
and then.
We're going to,
and then vote.
we debated, okay.
And then-
Okay, so the question then is to adopt a revised accounting policy with the amendments. Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say nay. Ayes have it, motion is carried. Right, and then our last item is to approve board officers. So I have a couple, I've talked to some people of some, I guess, nominations here. So first, I thought, we talked about, do we need a treasurer or not? Thought about it, discussed it with a few others, and thought it'd be a good idea to have a treasurer named, rather than leaving that position vacant. Skylar had agreed to serve in that treasurer role. So would anyone like to make a motion to appoint Skylar as the treasurer?
I nominate Skylar.
I second that.
I thought he already was.
Okay, it's moved and seconded to appoint Skylar. Any debate?
Did he give you a list of demands?
Is he giving a speech?
Can he give a speech?
So questions for you, Skylar?
No.
All right.
All right, no questions. Question is to appoint Skylar as treasurer. Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say nay. Ayes have it, motion is carried. So the second one was vice president. Christine was our former vice president, so that position is also vacant. Georgia has said she would be willing to fill in that role now. So would anyone like to make a motion to appoint Georgia as vice president?
So moved.
Second.
It's moved and seconded to appoint Georgia as vice president. Any debate? of speech or demands? Okay. So the question is to appoint Georgia as vice president. Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say nay. All right, the ayes have it. And then the last one is secretary, now that this, we just voted in Stacy, but now that position's been vacated. So Ellen has agreed to serve in that secretary position. So would anyone like to make a motion to appoint Ellen as the secretary?
So moved.
Second.
It is moved and seconded to appoint Ellen as secretary. Any debate?
No speech.
All right, question is to appoint Ellen as secretary. Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say nay. All right, the ayes have it and the motion is carried. And that is our agenda. Would someone like to make a motion to adjourn the meeting?
Randy, I've just got one
Yes.
question or comment. With Stacy resigning from the board, we'll be looking for a new person to fill that role in the next period of time?
Yeah. I mean-
Not the secretary role, but, so we have an odd
The new
number of
board
board
member.
members.
Yes.
Yeah, so we'll need to discuss that. This like literally happened Sunday.
Yeah, no, I
so we didn't have the time to address it, but yeah, I think that's something we want to discuss and potentially address.
Okay.
Well, in the past, what we've done is I think every board member has said, let's think about who we think might be a good fit, and we have the requirements on the website. We can be, funneling people to those if they're interested, and if we have anybody that we think would be a good person for the board, reach out to them, engage their interest, and stay in contact with Randy.
Great, thank you.
So would someone like to make a motion to adjourn the meeting?
I motion to adjourn the meeting.
Second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All right. Meeting is adjourned at 7:36 p.m.